So this is a spot where we're on the draw with our most powerful cards, but it's a little bit land light, of course. Just the one land here. We can play a turn 1 Chalice or potentially a quick Blood Moon. So I normally like to mulligan this hand on turn on 7. We don't know what we're up against. Maybe the Chalice on 1 is really good, but the Simian Spirit Guide, it's not a real land, and we have multiple 4-mana cards that we may not be able to cast. So I am gonna take the mulligan here. This hand, because we have Emrakul is basically useless, but I am going to keep it. We have Chalice, we have Gideon. Gemstone Caverns on top, it's interesting. I'm going to bottom it because we really would like a red producing land more than a Gemstone Caverns. So we can play Chalice on turn 2 here. And there's the second Gideon of the Trials right off the top, so not the best draw steps so far. I guess we've only had one, but the Scry was kind of like a draw step. Alright, Dark Confidant, so it looks like we may be up against like an Abzan type deck. I'm just going to hold up Blessed Alliance here. Hope that our opponent doesn't have a discard spell, because we really just need to get this Dark Confidant off the board right away. Or otherwise, it's just going to be too much card advantage. If our opponent plays like an Inquisition or Thoughtseize, we're going to be sad, because we could have already played this Chalice, but gotta get this Bob off the table. Give us maybe a little bit of breathing room, although we saw the Tireless Tracker get revealed off the Dark Confidant, and that's another problem card. And our opponent's just going to jam it right away. So a few options here, having drawn this Temple of Triumph. We could play Gideon, or play Chalice on 1 and get a Scry off the Temple. I think we really want the Scry, so I'm going to play the Temple. There's a Blood Moon, which is okay here, but our opponent has 2 basics, so I'm going to bottom it. Play Chalice on 1. And just pass. So we're digging towards removal for this tracker now. And our opponent does have a fetch land, so that card advantage that's gonna get created by this tracker is pretty annoying. And now the Gideon is looking less effective, because we can tick it up, right? But then our opponent can just attack it and get it off the table. So Journey to Nowhere, that's a start. We can use it to get rid of the tracker. But we may be up against a deck with cards like Abrupt Decay that can just get rid of these permanents. So hopefully that's not the case, but we'll see what happens. And our opponent correctly identifies that they should be sacrificing the Catacombs here in order to get an additional clue. So yeah, this draw, it's not really lining up well for this particular matchup. I actually like the prison deck more against Death Shadow Abzan than regular Abzan. Blood Moon and Chalice is generally better against the Death Shadow decks. Pretty good turn there for our opponent. Tarmogoyf into Liliana. And unless we find something right here, we can play Gideon, but it's just not going to be enough. So I'm going to go to game 2. So I like boarding in some of the grindier cards like the Elspeth, Wrath of God, and then the cards like the Anger of the Gods and the Helix, they're fine. The one Rest in Peace in the main deck is okay. It can answer cards like Goyf and potentially Lingering Souls, so I actually like boarding in a second Rest in Peace. Chalice is not particularly good in this matchup. I'm just going to go ahead and cut them all. We want Ley Lines, I believe, because even though we didn't see discard out of our opponent, pretty likely that they have discard spells in their deck. If we saw Noble Hierarch, Anger of the Gods would be better for the matchup. I'm going to take out the Anger of the Gods, as well as one copy of Simian Spirit Guide. Because if our opponent's disrupting our hand, then the Spirit Guides become a lot worse. This seems pretty reasonable to me, so I'm gonna go with this. So we have a Blood Moon. Maybe our opponent doesn't fetch out, doesn't find those basics that they had in the first game. So yeah, I'm gonna keep this hand. Arid Mesa, I actually think we want to keep that because we have a 5 mana card and a 6 mana card that we really want to be getting to. So I'm going to keep the Arid Mesa. It's also another white source that we can, another way to get a Plains before we play the Blood Moon. So I'm going to play the Mesa. We can now, if our opponent plays something like a Dark Confidant, we can just go ahead and Lightning Helix it away. Then we can land the Blood Moon next turn. Now, if our opponent has a discard spell, that would be good here. Goyf is fine. We can Helix that. Our opponent did smartly find a basic forest, though. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and thin out the deck. Even though we did draw Plains for the turn, still going to find a basic Plains and land this Blood Moon. So this is going to stop that Shambling Vents, and even though our opponent has the basic forest, I'm expecting this Blood Moon to be good here. So, sure, our opponent can maybe cast a Goyf or a Tracker, but a lot of their cards they cannot cast. And here's a copy of Nahiri. So we have the option of playing Nahiri here if we want to. And I think we do. But I don't believe we actually want to discard anything because our hand is very good. So I'm just going to go ahead and tick it up. And if our opponent attacks with this Tracker, we can also just get rid of the Tracker next turn with Gideon Jura. So it's basically a win-win situation for us. And assuming our opponent doesn't have that basic swamp, I don't really see how we lose this game. But, I mean, you know, I've said that before and then lost, so... So, yep, Tracker's going to come at Nahiri and then passing of the turn. So, yeah, this is just great. Get this Sacred Foundry into play. Land this Gideon Jura. And our opponents correctly come to the same conclusion that they have no chance in that game. So we're going to a game 3. We have yet to see any discard out of this Abzan deck, which is pretty weird. Not sure what to make of that, but I think we still have to play the Leyline of Sanctities. I mean, we saw Liliana the Last Hope instead of Liliana the Veil, which is weird, but Leyline, it does stop Thoughtseize and Inquisition if our opponent has them in their deck. Yeah, I think we should just run it back. So we had one bad draw, one good draw. Hopefully, where sometimes you just get those non-games. Basically, the first 2 games, they weren't great games. Sometimes you get that with this deck because of the hate cards. Here we've got fine hand, lots of Planeswalkers, but we don't want to see a card like Dark Confidant come down early. Any of our opponent's card advantage cards are going to be bad for us because this is a hand that wants to be just trading 1-for-1 with what the opponent's doing. So we get a Scry here. There's a Rest in Peace, which is a pretty interesting card to see on top. If our opponent has a Goyf, it shuts down Tarmogoyf. I'm going to keep it. It's a little bit of a gamble, but if our opponent might have Lingering Souls in their deck. We did not see it, but Rest in Peace, it's good against Liliana the Last Hope. It's good against Tarmogoyf, so definitely has its applications, but of course, our opponent has the 2-drop we did not want to see. It's the Dark Confidant, so it's pretty annoying because we have no way to answer it right now until turn 4, and at that point our opponent will have at least gotten a couple of cards off of it, so it's gonna gain our opponent a decent amount of card advantage here. So our opponent knows about this Rest in Peace. They're not going to want to commit Tarmogoyfs, and there's a Thoughtseize. So our opponent just revealed Thoughtseize, which we were basically waiting for, hope, and we don't have the Leyline. Did not draw it this game, so the Thoughtseize is going to see a pretty decent hand of ours. Multiple cards our opponent should be worried about, so hard to say what our opponent's going to take. Gideon's the card we can play next turn, but all of our 4-mana cards are more powerful than Gideon. It looks like our opponent's going to go ahead and take the Chandra. And what's the follow-up here? 2 mana. Definitely would not want to see another Dark Confidant. Now, our opponent might have something like an Abrupt Decay to get rid of the Rest in Peace. Might have just want to play out a Goyf, but it's going to be Collective Brutality. That's going to get rid of the Wrath of God, and our opponent's discarding a Fatal Push. No idea why that card would still be in our opponent's deck at all. That card's just awful against us because it really doesn't kill. We don't really play creatures outside of Simian Spirit Guide and Emrakul and like tokens from Elspeth Sun's Champion, so Fatal Push is very bad. I would always want to side it out if I could in this matchup. But in any case, we're just going to play the cards that we have left. So what else can we do? We're going to play Gideon plus stop this Dark Confidant and pass the turn. We can go ahead. Well, so now our opponent's pretty incentivized not to attack us, which means the Nahiri may not actually be able to exile this Dark Confidant, and our opponent's going to continue getting card advantage off of it. Now there's a Kalidas that's been revealed off of this Dark Confidant, and a Liliana of the Veil's coming down. Okay, so actually we don't mind this Liliana of the Veil because we have Gideon, which can attack it. Although we kind of want to go after our opponent's life total because our opponent's all the way down to 12 now. But the Liliana of the Veil is a little bit more pressing, I think. So what did our opponent discard? Another copy of Fatal Push. Okay, so clearly they mis-sideboarded in the matchup. We have found a Rest in Peace. So I'm going to go ahead and start off by playing this Nahiri out, because we're doing that no matter what. We're going to play it, plus it. And definitely want to just go ahead and get rid of this excess Rest in Peace. Found a Blood Moon, which is solid. And I think we want to go ahead and attack Liliana. We'll see if our opponent wants to get rid of their Dark Confidant or let Liliana hit the graveyard. And it looks like Liliana is just going to hit the graveyard. So the Dark Confidant's going to continue giving our opponent some value. Tarmogoyf this time is the card which is being revealed. So that does get nullified by the Rest in Peace, assuming that the Rest in Peace stays in play. But we know about Kalidas, Trader of Get, so it could be that our opponent just plays the Kalidas this turn. But I think we're still in a good spot. We can play the Blood Moon and start plussing Gideon on Kalidas to stop that from dealing us damage. And there's a Journey to Nowhere, so things are looking pretty good. I'm gonna land the Blood Moon here. Plus Gideon on Kalidas. And then exile away the Dark Confidant. Stop that card advantage engine, finally. It has hurt our opponent. Our opponent's all the way down to 9, though. And with the Kalidas stopped, we can keep our Planeswalkers in play. Journey to Nowhere next turn can take out the Kalidas. And we should be able to close this game out. So our opponent doesn't have green mana, so they don't have access to Abrupt Decay. So I think we can go ahead and attack with Gideon of the Trials here. Now if our opponent did have Abrupt Decay, they could, at instant speed, get rid of something like the Journey to Nowhere. So we did discard a Simian Spirit Guide. We found a second copy though, which you know, it happens. Even though I believe we sideboarded and went out. But anyways, that's the match.